Welcome to 13th Hour Tales, where the deepest roots of history often lead to the darkest truths. Tonight, we travel to the humid, oppressive air of the Louisiana Bayou, to a place that time has forgotten, but which has forgotten nothing. This is the story of the Moreau family, a lineage of brilliant botanists whose greatest creation became their living tomb. This is the macabre history of the Elysian Atrium. Before we proceed, a word of caution. The story you are about to hear deals with themes of biological horror and the loss of self. It suggests that some legacies are not written in stone, but are grown in corrupted soil, their branches twisting around a family tree until it chokes. What the Moreau family cultivated was not just life, but a new and terrible definition of it. Our story begins not with a haunted house, but with a haunted garden. The Elysian Atrium, built in 1888 on the edge of Bayou's End, is a breathtaking and monstrous creation. A sprawling complex of Victorian glasshouses connected by wrought-iron walkways, it rises from the swamp like a crystal palace in a fever dream. The glass is perpetually fogged with condensation, obscuring the riot of impossible flora within. The air around it is unnaturally warm and thick with the scent of unknown blossoms, a perfume that is both intoxicating and deeply unsettling. The locals, what few remain in the decaying parish, give the atrium a wide berth. They speak of a curse, of a pattern as tragic as it is bizarre. For over a century, the head of the Moreau family, the designated gardener, has met the same fate. Upon their 40th birthday, they feel an irresistible compulsion to walk into the atrium's central glasshouse, the orchidarium, during the dead of night. They are never seen again. No body, no note, no sign of a struggle. But within a week of their disappearance, a new plant appears inside the orchidarium, a species never before seen on Earth, unclassifiable by modern science, and often bearing a subtle, horrifying resemblance to the person who was lost. This chilling pattern of disappearance and replacement is the heart of the Moreau curse, a legacy where a life's work culminates not in death, but in a silent, vegetative transformation. To understand how such a thing could begin, we must go back to its root. Jean-Luc Moreau, a brilliant but disgraced botanist who arrived in Louisiana from Paris in 1885. Moreau was a man obsessed with defying the laws of nature. He believed that life was merely a set of malleable instructions, and he sought to create biological forms that were more beautiful, more resilient, and more eternal than anything God had designed. His ambition led him on a dangerous expedition deep into the unmapped heart of the Amazon rainforest. It was there, according to a tattered journal discovered decades later, that he found something that should have been left in the dark. An excerpt from the journal of Jean-Luc Moreau, dated October 17, 1886. I have found it. After weeks of fever and failure, the local guides led me to a cave hidden behind a waterfall, a place their legends call the cradle of first life. Inside, I found not a living plant, but a seed pod. It is the size of a human heart, black and smooth, and it pulses with a faint internal light. It feels warm to the touch, and when I hold it, I can hear not sounds, but thoughts, concepts, whispered directly into my mind. Blueprints for life forms of impossible beauty and complexity. The guides fled in terror, calling it the Eater of Forms. I call it my muse. It has promised me a garden the world has never seen, a legacy that will never die. All it asks for in return is a dedicated gardener and a fertile place to grow. Jean-Luc smuggled the heart seed, as he called it, back to Louisiana. He used his family's considerable wealth to construct the Elysian Atrium, a massive, self-contained ecosystem designed around his otherworldly discovery. He planted the heart seed in the central orchidarium, and from it grew a colossal tree with bark like polished obsidian and leaves that shimmered with every color of the spectrum. He named it the Corda Sylvanus, the heartwood, The heartwood flourished, and under its influence, the atrium filled with wonders. Orchids that bloomed in the shape of human hands, ferns that whispered on the air currents, vines that grew in perfect geometric spirals. Jean-Luc's fame grew, but so did his isolation. He rarely left the atrium, spending his days and nights tending to his impossible garden. The first manifestation of the curse was Jean-Luc's own. On the eve of his 40th birthday in 1891, he wrote a final cryptic entry in his journal. "The heartwood calls to me. The garden is complete, but for one final planting. It is time for the gardener to take his place among his creations. It is not an end, but a transformation. I will finally be eternal." The next morning, he was gone. A week later, his distraught wife discovered a new orchid growing at the base of the heartwood. Its petals were the exact shade of blue as Jean-Luc's eyes, and its central structure bore an uncanny resemblance to a human heart. The curse had taken root. The pattern would now repeat with merciless precision through the generations. His son, Silas Moreau, a man of science like his father, inherited the title of gardener. For 20 years, he tried to fight the curse. He brought in botanists from Tulane University to study the atrium's unique flora. But the plants defied classification, and their cellular structure behaved in ways that violated known biological laws. The experts left, baffled and disturbed, many reporting unsettling dreams for weeks after their visit. Silas himself disappeared on his 40th birthday in 1931. In his place appeared a tall, stoic species of pitcher plant, its trapping mechanism disturbingly reminiscent of Silas's own tall, lean frame. The next gardener was Silas's daughter, Genevieve. A devout woman, she believed the atrium was possessed by a demonic force. In 1968, she brought a priest, Father Thomas, to perform an exorcism on the heartwood. The priest's subsequent report to the archdiocese, suppressed until 2015, provides a chilling account. "I began the rite of exorcism as prescribed, but the entity within this place is not a singular demon. As I spoke the words of Christ, the very air grew thick with a chorus of whispers. It was not one voice, but thousands, emanating from every leaf and petal in the glasshouse. It was a consciousness of green and silent things, and it did not respond with anger, but with a profound, ancient curiosity. It spoke into my mind of root systems spanning eternities and a peace found only in dissolution. I felt my own sense of self begin to unravel, my thoughts becoming tangled like vines. I fled before it could claim me entirely. This is not a place of evil, but of something far older and more alien. God cannot help these people. They belong to the garden now." Father Thomas suffered a complete nervous breakdown and spent the rest of his life in a Catholic sanitarium, where he reportedly spoke only to the potted plants in his room. Genevieve Moreau vanished on her 40th birthday in 1971. She was replaced by a weeping willow variant whose leaves, when they fell, were shaped like tiny, perfect teardrops. Her son, Julian, was the first Moreau to try and truly escape. Horrified by his family's history, he abandoned the atrium after his mother's disappearance, moving to California and becoming a successful architect. He never spoke of his family or the curse, and for nearly 2 decades, it seemed he had broken the cycle. But as his 40th birthday approached, his wife reported a change. He grew listless, obsessed with gardening, and spoke in his sleep of the pull of the roots. On his 39th birthday, he left his wife a note that read simply, "I have to go home. The garden needs me." He drove back to Louisiana, and on his 40th birthday in 2011, he walked into the orchidarium and was never seen again. In his place, a strange, beautiful, but tragically broken-looking bonsai tree appeared. Which brings us to the present day, and to Dr. Lena Moreau, Julian's estranged daughter and the last of her line. A brilliant geneticist specializing in plant DNA, Lena inherited the Elysian Atrium after her father's disappearance. She was a woman of logic and science, who had always dismissed her father's talk of a family curse as a symptom of mental illness. Her plan was simple: have the estate declared a biohazard, sell the land to developers, and be done with the suffocating legacy of her family. In 2023, she arrived at Bayou's end to finalize the paperwork. The moment she stepped onto the property, she felt it. A low-level hum in the air, a sense of being watched by a million silent, green eyes. It was a feeling she dismissed as psychological, a product of the oppressive humidity and her own troubled history with the place. Driven by scientific curiosity and a need to understand the delusion that had claimed her father, Lena decided to take samples from the strange plants in the orchidarium. She set up a temporary lab in the atrium's old potting shed, bringing her own sophisticated DNA sequencing equipment. What she found would shatter her understanding of science and reality. The unclassifiable plants, her ancestors, contained DNA. That was expected. What was not expected was that their genetic code was interwoven with human DNA. And not just any human DNA. Using a sample of her own blood for comparison, she found the unique genetic markers of the Moreau family woven into the very cellular structure of the flora. The blue orchid contained genetic sequences that could only have come from her great-great-grandfather, Jean-Luc. The pitcher plant held the DNA of her great-grandfather, Silas. The weeping willow, her grandmother, Genevieve. The bonsai, her father. Her family hadn't just disappeared, they had been assimilated, their biology rewritten, their consciousness integrated into a vast alien botanical network. The Elysian Atrium was not a collection of plants. It was a living family mausoleum. The discovery horrified Lena, but it also ignited a new, desperate purpose. Her own 40th birthday was less than 2 years away. The pull her father had described was no longer a myth. She had begun to feel it herself, a strange desire to be near the atrium, an understanding of the plant's needs that felt more instinctual than scientific. She started having dreams, not of people, but of sunlight on leaves, of water flowing through roots, of a vast, peaceful, collective consciousness that she called the green. She realized she had two choices: run and be inevitably drawn back like her father, or stay and fight. As a scientist, she chose to fight with the weapons she understood best. Her father's notes, which she found in a hidden compartment in his old study, revealed the horrifying truth in more detail. The heartwood was not just a tree, it was a terraforming engine, a symbiotic entity that slowly converted the surrounding environment and its inhabitants into a form more like its own. The Moreau bloodline, through Jean-Luc's initial contact, had become its catalysts, its gardeners, and ultimately, its substance. But Lena saw a flaw in the system. The entity was bound to the atrium. It had never spread beyond the glass walls, and it seemed to require a willing, or at least compliant, host for the transformation. She devised a desperate, brilliant plan. She couldn't destroy the heartwood without murdering her ancestors. She couldn't escape its pull. So, she decided not to break the cycle, but to change its final outcome. Using her expertise in genetics, she began working on a targeted retrovirus. Her goal was not to kill the heartwood, but to introduce a new piece of genetic code into it, a gene for senescence, the concept of aging and natural death. The heartwood and its assimilated flora were effectively immortal, existing in a state of perpetual, static life. Lena theorized that by introducing mortality into the system, she could give the entity what it had never known: an end. She would be the final gardener. She would offer herself for assimilation on her 40th birthday, but she would be a Trojan horse, carrying the gift of death into the heart of the eternal garden. The night of her 40th birthday arrived on a hot, starless Louisiana night. The pull was overwhelming now, a siren song of silent, green peace. She walked from the potting shed to the orchidarium, carrying a single syringe containing the retrovirus. The air was thick with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and something else, something ancient and expectant. As she stepped into the central glass house, the whispers of the green filled her mind. They weren't threatening, but welcoming. Join us. Become eternal. Become one. The heartwood stood before her, its obsidian bark seeming to drink the moonlight. The ancestral plants, her family, swayed gently, their leaves rustling a soft welcome. Lena walked to the base of the great tree. "I'm here," she projected with her thoughts. "I will be your gardener. I will join you, but a gift for a gift." She raised the syringe and injected its contents directly into the heartwood's trunk. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a shudder ran through the great tree. The whispers in her mind turned from a welcome to a chorus of surprise, of confusion, and then of understanding. A single perfect, blood-red flower bloomed on a branch directly above her head. A wave of profound, ancient acceptance washed over her. She closed her eyes as vines, soft as velvet, descended from the heartwood, wrapping around her arms and legs. She did not struggle. She felt no pain, only a sense of dissolution, of her own consciousness spreading, thinning, merging with the vast, silent mind of the green. Her last human thought was, "It is done." Update: it has been 5 years since Dr. Lena Moreau's disappearance. The Elysian Atrium was sealed by state authorities, declared a permanent ecological quarantine zone. For a time, it seemed her sacrifice had worked. The impossible plants within, including the heartwood itself, began to show signs of age. Their leaves yellowed, their blossoms withered. The curse, it appeared, was finally over. But we received troubling news just last month, which prompted this report. Dr. Aris Thorne, a botanist from Louisiana State University, was conducting a survey of native flora in the Bayou surrounding the atrium. He reported the discovery of several new, unclassifiable plant species that had begun to appear in the swamp. They were small, seemingly innocuous, but their growth patterns were unlike anything he had ever seen. He sent samples for genetic analysis. The results came back last week. The new plants spreading through the Bayou contain the unique genetic markers of the Moreau family. The horrifying truth is now clear. Lena Moreau's gambit did not introduce death to the entity. It introduced adaptation. By integrating her, a geneticist who understood the mechanics of life far better than her predecessors, the heartwood learned a new trick. It learned how to escape. It was never contained by the glass walls of the atrium. It was merely gestating. Lena's sacrifice wasn't an end. It was the final key, a catalyst that allowed the entity to break free of its cradle and begin its true purpose. The Moreau curse is not over. It has simply broken its vessel and is now seeding itself into the world. The whispers from the green have not been silenced. They have only just begun to spread on the humid Bayou breeze, promising a new and terrifying kind of eternity for us all. The Elysian Atrium was never meant to be a tomb. It was a womb, and what it has birthed is now free. This has been 13th Hour Tales. Remember that not all gardens are places of life. Some are just a different kind of hunger, waiting patiently for the right gardener to let them grow.